Welcome to Passionate Reply, and welcome to Great Albums. Today, I'll be talking about an album not too many people have heard, but that I think more people really should, especially fans of Kraftwerk. It's Esperanto, the 1993 debut of Kraftwerk alumnus Karl Bartos' project Elektric Music. The production of the final classic lineup Kraftwerk LP 1986's Electric Cafe had been dominated by frustrating delays, rewrites, and remixes, and when all was said and done, the resulting album was a relative flop. By the time of the 1991 remix album The Mix, which seemed to end Kraftwerk's career with a whimper, Bartos had grown alienated from founding members Rolf Hütter and Florian Schneider-Esleben, and fed up with their apparent lack of work ethic. He set out on his own, partnering with Lothar Manteuffel of the Neue Deutsche Welle act Rheingold to form Elektric Music. What I think really stands out about Esperanto first is its sense of freewheeling, unrestrained immediacy. For nearly a decade leading up to this album, Bartos had been working at the whim of others, waiting around, and feeling like he was spinning his wheels. Esperanto feels like a tightly coiled spring that's finally being released. It's dense, busy, in-your-face music that positively demands to be paid attention to. Vibrating at the core of Esperanto is an undeniable Kraftwerk-esque sonic template. Textural synth side swipes, chattering vocoder-driven vocals, and hypnotic mechanical rhythms. It's natural to expect that rhythmic quality from Bartos, since he was chiefly brought on to provide percussion parts for Kraftwerk, but it's also important to remember that he's as interested in pop music as he is in classical. Both Bartos' solo work as well as the Kraftwerk tracks he had a hand in emphasize melody in a poppy, easy-to-love manner. The melodies here have some precedent in Bartos' earlier work, but they've never been quite as punchy and vibrant before. Lifestyle also makes early use of vocal chops, which contribute to that tight and busy feel while also being a marked attempt at pushing this core sound into the musical future. Some of these specific samples are actually repeated across multiple tracks if you listen closely, a sort of callback to the repeated melodic motifs of the early Kraftwerk albums. Information, a high-concept 8-minute epic that the rest of the track listing pivots around, is even closer to being structured like Trans-Europe Express.
Information wants to be free.
Information.
Transformation.
Information wants to be free.
Information.
Information.
Wants to be free.
Information.
free.
Bartos has never really ceased struggling under the weight of his Kraftwerk past, torn between indulging in these ideas and themes that come so naturally to him and feeling obligated to set himself apart, as well as obligated to push the envelope and break new musical ground. Esperanto radiates and burns with that sense of conflict, which feels fresher and more raw given the time frame involved. This tension between working with and working against the Kraftwerk legacy is not only musical, but also thematic. Like the Kraftwerk albums, Esperanto is deeply concerned with the role technology plays in our lives. But it's a lot less optimistic. Take, for instance, the opening track, TV.
Watch the news on the screen. Is it real or a dream? The whole world at my command. TV guide in my hand. Every place, every time. Politics, sex and crime. I press the key.
TV is Esperanto at its most gloomy or melancholy, portraying the detached haze of modern lotus eaters transfixed by the glowing screen. It's an image that's readily familiar and relatable to us today, of course, and it's also one that runs contrary to the techno-utopianism of Kraftwerk, where home technologies offer hope of bringing people together rather than splitting them apart and disconnecting them from the real world. If that wasn't enough to convince you to read TV as an anti-Kraftwerk screed, the lyrics even point to computer graphics and electric bands as fodder for that destructively distracting entertainment. Ouch. Along similar lines as the track Kissing the Machine. Kissing the Machine is also a sort of rebuttal of Kraftwerk tracks like Computer Love, demonstrating the pitiful perversion it really is to expect human emotional fulfillment from a cold and sterile mechanical contraption. Whereas TV is more overtly downbeat, Kissing the Machine takes the route of dramatic irony, going for an eerily cheerful, naive sort of sound, painting its narrator as utterly oblivious to what they're missing out on. You probably noticed that the vocalist on this track is actually not Bartos. It's Andy McCluskey, best known as a frontman of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. Like Manteuffel, McCluskey is a younger synth-pop artist whose career began in the 1980s, making music that owed quite a lot to what Kraftwerk had achieved before. Bringing on some slightly younger talent is not only a nod towards keeping up with the times, but also another jab at the legacy of Kraftwerk, who refused to collaborate with any other musicians, and at times even seemed loath to acknowledge how the art of electronic music had evolved in their wake. As the title of Esperanto implies, the theme of language is also prominent here, and that serves as yet another way in which the Kraftwerk philosophy is turned on its head, most notably in the title track. people assert that it's more authentic to listen to Kraftwerk in German, they made consistent attempts to incorporate a wide variety of languages into their work. Besides the English language versions of their LPs, Kraftwerk also sang in French, Italian, Spanish, Russian, and even Japanese to varying degrees. They were selling a vision of Europe endless that was multicultural and multilingual, and seemed to have wanted people from all over the world to connect with them and feel included and represented in their future, rather than view them as some distant and peculiarly Teutonic phenomenon. Esperanto flies in the face of the dream of linguistic unity. Esperanto itself is an artificial constructed language created by L.L. Zamenhof in the late 19th century. Combining features from the most commonly spoken languages across the globe and streamlining away things like irregular verbs, Esperanto was built from the ground up to become a true universal language for all of mankind that was easy to learn and use. But despite the hopes of Zamenhof, whose name for his new tongue translates to English as one who hopes, it obviously never caught on. The most beautiful utopian vision in the world is still just a vision, and you can end up failing, even if you've got the perfect pitch. Kraftwerk's longtime graphic designer Emil Schult, whose contributions to Kraftwerk's signature aesthetic are nearly as important to their legacy as any of their music, returned to create the cover art of Esperanto. With its bright and simple red tone and strong use of diagonals, Esperanto's cover art is clearly evocative of the iconic cover of Kraftwerk's 1978 LP, The Man Machine, arguably the finest hour for the band as well as Schult. However, its abstract, non-figurative qualities set it apart from the work Schult and Bartos had done before, as Kraftwerk hadn't made an album that didn't feature their own faces front and center since 1975's Radioactivity. The image of a rising sun is fitting for the idea of Bartos' empowered return to music after a period of dormancy. The world is full of people bemoaning the fact that Kraftwerk gave up on making new music, and the apparent irony of this band who appeared to be visiting from the future being absent from the world they helped create, in which electronic music has ceased to be a novelty and become a default. Karl Bartos may not be the most prolific artist in the world, but I've always seen him as the rightful heir to the Kraftwerk legacy, and I think his string of solo albums since leaving the band are the most worthy follow-ups that could ever have been paired with Kraftwerk's classic run. Esperanto does everything you could possibly want a 1990s Kraftwerk album to do, staying true to that musical heritage while also pushing forward and staking a place in the broader artistic conversation. I think everyone who identifies as a fan of Kraftwerk owes it to himself to give Esperanto a spin. My favorite track on Esperanto is the closer, Overdrive. Unlike the readily apparent cynicism pervaded by tracks like TV and Kissing the Machine, Overdrive reads as a more complex perspective about technology and everyday life. It's a portrayal of that all-too-modern scourge of overstimulation that's still ultimately a very exciting one, that sweeps you up in its triumphant kiss of life. Listening to its chaotic instrumental outro, I can't help but feel that it leads directly into Bartos' follow-up to Esperanto, 2003's Communication, an album that would tackle the internet age and its inescapable virtual hustle and bustle head-on. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.